Sam Wright. My name is Sam Wright, and I was born and raised in a small town in Utah. When I finally graduated from college with a computer science degree, I took a job at a large accounting firm on the East Coast. I worked there for a year and didn't like it at all, so I quit. The money was good, but I was locked in a small cubicle and couldn't tell whether it was day or night. Growing up in Utah, I was used to being outside, enjoying the freedom, seeing the sky, and feeling the wind in my hair. When I left the company, I got a job at a car rental company. The location was at the airport, and there was another branch on the outskirts of town. Here I could go outside whenever I wanted. I wasn't locked in a windowless cubicle. My boss, John, was an older man and a hard worker who built a business from the ground up. He started out renting old cars and then moved on to new ones and was doing pretty well. He had many clients that he had worked with before. I worked with John for a little over a year and a few more months. I also lived at his house since his wife died and he was completely alone. His two children lived on the West Coast. He paid for their college education and now they have good jobs. John and I often sat in front of the TV or went out to dinner together. I became close to him, and he treated me like one of his children. But like all good things, it had to end. John suffered a heart attack after a year of work and was told to retire. I took care of him after his kids went home, and he promised the kids that he would quit his job, sell the business, and move to the West Coast to retire. Eventually, John offered to buy me his business and said he would lower the price for me. I didn't know what to do since I didn't have any money and I wasn't even thinking about buying one. John said, if I didn't take risks, I'd still be working for someone else and my kids would be working for me. I took a chance and my children got a good education and now I have enough money. I told him I would think about it and let him know. He told me the price he would like to receive and gave me several contacts so that I could try to get the money. I looked at the plan I laid out and decided it was worth a try and started going to the banks. This is how I met my wife because she worked at a bank and was responsible for the business lending department. Her name was Shelley Sherman. At the bank, I told one guy what I wanted and he told me to sit down, someone would be coming soon. I waited about 5 minutes when Shelley came out of the office and talked to the guy. When I saw her, I thought she was a high school student doing an internship. She came up and asked me to follow her. She introduced herself and said that she would handle my loan, which surprised me. After I answered a few of her questions and explained why I came, she asked me for documents. I didn't have all the required paperwork, and the ones I did have weren't filled out correctly. I immediately realized that I made a bad impression and felt stupid when she started explaining something to me. In addition, she asked where I was from. I said I was from Horseheads, and she asked where it was. I replied that there were 2 Horseheads, one in New York and one in Utah. I was from Utah. I sat in her office filling out the forms she gave me, and she was very helpful. When everything was finally ready, she checked the documents and said that she would need to verify the information I gave, which would take time, so she would contact me in a few days. She apologized but said she didn't think the bank would approve my loan. If I have another bank or any ideas on how to get the money, it's better to go this route. As I said, I need to get the money quickly. I felt worthless when she told me all this. Who is this young schoolgirl to tell me that I won't get the money? In Utah, everything was decided by shaking hands, and it was done. You simply repaid the debt when you could. How do they do things in the South? 3 days later, she called me to the bank, and we discussed my loan. She directly said that she couldn't even pass the application on because it was a waste of time. The loan committee trusted her opinion, and she knew it would be a waste. She asked me, "Do you have an education?" I said, "I have a computer science degree." She replied, "It's not on the form." So we filled out another one. Shelley said, "I still won't be able to transfer the application, but I will help you prepare the documents to submit elsewhere and give you some tips on how to do it. In my opinion, I can't justify a loan for you, but if you let me take it home, I'll write a resume for you so you know how to apply and what your weaknesses are. I'm sorry to say, but you'll have to significantly exaggerate your application or you'll never get the loan. Did you know that over 90% of new businesses don't survive a year? You don't have money to support you. If a tornado or winter storm hits and you can't work for a week, your business will fail. You need to think about it, and I don't think you've thought about it at all. I'm sorry to be as rude as you may think, but my job is to protect the bank and the people who do business with the bank. I hope I didn't offend you. Sorry if that's the case. I asked her if she wanted to go to lunch, but she said she had things to do and apologized, saying she would redo my papers. I could pick them up from her in a few days, and then we could have lunch together. I was glad she didn't want lunch as my stomach was churning, and I couldn't eat or drink at that point. Besides, this beautiful girl no longer seemed so attractive to me. A few days later, she handed me my papers, and we went to lunch. She said that the only way to get a loan in this city is to lie on the application, and she would be embarrassed if I did that, but the choice is mine. Of course, it will be another bank that will issue me a loan. She gave me some information and advice, but broke my heart and the confidence I had. I went back to John and we discussed it. He said he had the same problems when he started, but he took a chance and succeeded. We worked out a plan together, and he ended up selling me his house, which I had to pay off over 5 years with a lump sum payment at the end of the term. He re-registered it in another county, and thus the bank decided that I owned it freely and without encumbrances. This gave me a lot of collateral to apply for a loan. So after lying on the application, I finally got a business loan from another bank. The first year I worked like hell. I worked from 10 in the morning until 10 or 12 at night, 7 days a week. I had basically 4 full-time employees who were great at their jobs. Most of my employees went to local college, and I paid them minimum wage. The car rental business was booming, and I was making tons of money. My family came to visit me, and we spent a week at work. Everyone helped with the work. My younger brother stayed for the summer, and I gave him a job. He lived with me while he was here. Then I sent him home on a plane when school started. He had enough money to buy a used car for school. I rented a room in a boarding house near the local college. I didn't need a big house, but I got one for a good price, so I rented it to a city cop while his house was being built. 14 months later, I returned to the house and moved in again. Then I decided to reduce my working hours to 60 hours a week. To me, it was hard to go a whole year without sex. I finally started going to clubs and meeting girls from college. It was there that I met Shelley again. Shelley was in a group of 10 people, and I saw that she was with a guy. I didn't know if she was married or engaged. I still liked her and wanted to give her a chance. I walked over to her booth where she was sitting in the middle. I tried to say something, but the music was too loud, and she shook her head as if she couldn't hear me. She recognized me by the wide smile on her face. She laughed when she saw me. I wrote her a note asking if I could have a cigarette and buy me a beer at the bar. After reading the note, she laughed out loud and nodded in agreement. She apologized and squeezed out of the booth. All this time she continued to hold the note, laughing and smiling on her way to the bar. At the bar, she opened her purse and offered me a cigarette, then took out her wallet to buy us both drinks. She asked, "How are you?" "Everything is fine. I work like an ox. I earn tons of money." "So why am I buying you drinks if you make so much money?" "Well, that's how I made money. I make women buy me drinks," and we both laughed. I told her how I lied and got money from another bank, and she was surprised that I even got the loan. She thought I was already back in Utah or already there. Soon her boyfriend approached us, asking her if they were still on a date. She apologized to him and said that I was her client from the bank, and she was checking how things were going with the loan and would be back soon. The guy stayed standing next to us and didn't leave until she left. Shelley introduced me to Paul, her boyfriend, but he was clearly unhappy. She said, "Okay, I'll see you at the bank sometime," and they both went back to their group. I watched them for about an hour. She kept looking at me, and I could see her boyfriend was getting angry, so I left the club. I didn't need to get into a fight. I dated different girls in Utah, but the relationships lasted 6 months at most. I didn't want to commit myself until I was sure of my future. It usually took a month of meetings to get sex from a girl. Oh yes, there were those who disagreed, and we just walked past them. Here, between college girls and young ladies, I didn't have to wait a month to get sex. It could have been done that same night. It seemed that in the South girls agreed to this more easily. It wasn't until Thursday that I was able to call Shelley at the bank. She agreed to have lunch with me. That day I took her. We talked for an hour and a half before she returned to the bank. We agreed to meet for lunch the next day since her schedule was full for the weekend with dates. On Friday, we agreed to meet the following Friday evening. We were supposed to have dinner and a movie. We had a good time on our date and talked non-stop. I told her about all the problems I had with the loan and how I got around them. She laughed at me and said I was a fraud. We laughed a lot. She invited me over to her place, where I met her roommate, Jill. We talked until 3 in the morning, and they both teased me, making jokes about my life in Horseheads, Utah. Of course, I joked that things like indoor plumbing and electricity are a miracle for us and stuff like that. The next day we went shopping and then sat at her house, talking again. Jill joined us, and we all discussed everything and nothing at the same time. That night Jill went on a date and Shelley, and I picked out a movie and watched it at her house. Her boyfriend, Paul, called her that evening, and she spoke to him for about 20 minutes. She told me that she had been seeing him for 3 months. A month ago, he gave her a ring and proposed marriage. She refused, saying it was too early and she needed more time to get to know him. She admitted that she felt guilty for turning him down and allowing him to stay the night. After that, he stayed for 2 more nights. All this meant that they had sex, although she did not say so directly. Shelley said she was confused and still young and didn't know what she wanted out of life. She talked a lot about Paul and how they met. She also told me about Jill and how they became neighbors. Jill came over at midnight with her boyfriend, and we all played cards together until 2 in the morning when I left. The next day, I invited Shelley to dinner, and we went to the movies. I asked her about the next date, but she refused. She said she needed to talk to Paul and work things out with him before she could go out with me again. Shelley said she would call me at work when everything was settled. Well, Shelley called every day, but she was still dealing with the Paul situation. We talked, but 10 days passed before she agreed to meet with me. She told me that Paul works in her building and keeps a close eye on her. I think she wanted to say that he was stalking her, but she didn't dare call it that. We started dating again, and sometimes we noticed Paul checking up on us. We mostly stayed at her house and engaged in passionate kissing. She had classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and those were my nights out at bars, which she didn't like. She heard from her friends that I was dancing and talking to other girls. On such evenings, there were no kisses, as she was cold towards me. We talked a lot about family, and she had 2 younger sisters, and I had 2 younger brothers. We joked that we would bring them together and have a wedding. She talked about her personal life, and I talked about all my girlfriends. She said she was still bothered by her ex-boyfriend, Matt Upshaw. They were together all through high school and part of college. She went to study in another state, and he went to the Naval Academy to become an officer. They texted all the time, and she thought they were doing well. She said that on Thanksgiving of her junior year, they met at home and spent the weekend together having sex. But when she returned to school, he wrote that he was dating another girl and planned to marry her. This unsettled her. Son bitch went to her, knowing that he was going to leave her, but still he needed to get his pleasure. It was obvious that this had hurt her. Her family loved him, but she wanted something to fall away from him. Her sisters were in love with him, and she hoped that he would not deceive them and sleep with them. This also confused her. She said she saw him after that, and he married Miss Alabama after graduation. She said she got blackout drunk that night and would never drink again. She ended up in the hospital and had her stomach pumped. She said it was terrible. Since she arrived in town, she has dated many guys, but according to her, she has only had sex with 2 Mike and Paul. She never directly said that she had sex, but you could understand that she had. She never revealed how many times she had sex in college, but I'm guessing it was a few times, especially after Matt left her. Well, I guess talking about our ex-lovers turned us both on, because we ended up in her bed having sex. We spent the entire day in bed and then went to the bar for the night. After drinking, we went to my place and spent the night there, having sex again. When we had sex in her room, there was a picture of her ex-boyfriend Matt on the dresser, and it pissed me off. I asked her why she was keeping his photo. She simply said that it was so and did not give any other explanation. She said no one ever gave her another photo, so she just left it. Well, I gave her a photo of me in my cap and gown from college. We got married a year later. My business was doing great, and she had a good job. Jill married Ralph a month before us, as she was several months pregnant. We both ended up having children, first a girl, then a boy, just like Jill and her husband. We used each other to look after the children when needed. Shelley's parents lived 90 miles away and came for birthdays and other holidays. During these holidays, I learned about Shelley's oddities from conversations with her family. They said that she never throws anything away and simply puts things in places that she considers safe. But her mother or one of her sisters always found them. They said she was putting the photographs in frames one by one. Her mother found out that Shelley had sex with Matt and was very upset, but eventually put her on birth control pills. Both parents did not approve of this, but considered it better than having small children in the family. At holidays, they often talked about Matt and how well he was doing in the service, since Shelley's mother and father loved him, and her sisters too. His marriage to Miss Alabama lasted only 2 years, and they divorced. He then married an Asian woman for 3 years, after which he arranged for her to be deported back to her country. I heard about all his promotions and everything new that happened to him. I never had any real problems with Shelley, except for one time when she received an invitation to attend Matt's promotion ceremony and wanted to go. It was only 200 miles from us. We had a big fight, and I was really pissed off. I couldn't believe she asked me to go to such an event. I didn't know this man, and I didn't want to know him. He may have been her first love, but he left her. Why she even thought about going there was beyond me. By then, he was already in his 3rd marriage and divorce. I heard that this marriage lasted less than a year. They said that this was the 3rd marriage for both. Shelley and I were fighting for about 2 months before things went back to normal, just like in a normal family. Her family took my side this time and were upset that she even asked me about it. They told her that it was just a friendly invitation from Matt, and it was just a notice that it was happening and was not intended for her to actually go there. However, she couldn't understand it. Other than that, everything was fine at home. In the 15th year of our marriage, everything went wrong. Shelley told me she was going to Charlotte, North Carolina for some shopping and a show with some of her girlfriends, and also to meet up with some old college friends who live there. She said she would be back late on Sunday. I didn't think much about it and decided that she would have a good time with her friends. She asked if she could take my new car instead of her 5-year-old one. I always drove a new car from work. I used one of the cars for 3 months and then rented it out and bought another new one. We had an old minivan that was 5 years old, and I wanted to replace it every 3 years, but she loved this one, so we kept it longer. She just didn't trust him on long trips, so I let her take my car. We had sex the night before she left, and she kissed the kids goodbye at noon the next day. She said she was going to pick up her friends and leave. I decided to take Friday off and spend it with the kids, so I told work that I would be gone all day. We started by going to a burger joint, and then they wanted to go shopping, so we went to the mall. At 2 o'clock, my mobile phone rang. I thought it was Shelley. Maybe she was having trouble with her car, but it was Nick from work. Nick said, "You don't have your car, do you?" "No, what?" "Your car drives without you," he laughed. "No, that's my wife on top of her. So it's okay," I laughed in response. "She's heading north on I-95 right now," he said. "North on 95? You can track her and I'll call you back. Leave a journal entry. She is going to visit her friends and will be away for several days. Thanks for looking after my car, Nick." We hung up and I wondered why she went north. She should have gone west, not north. I asked the kids again, and they both said she went west to Charlotte. We finished shopping and went home. The kids went to play with friends, and I called work to check where the car was. Nick read me the magazine and said that she didn't stop in town and went straight to the highway. If someone else got behind the wheel, they had to jump into the car along the road. He said she was now on us 58 heading east, so I told him to contact me when the car finally stopped. Nick was going to leave early, but he offered to stay and help if I wanted, and I thanked him for it. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Nick informed me that the car was parked at the Naval Station in Newport News, Virginia. Damn it, she must be dating Matt. She lied to me. I'm waiting for her call before I do anything. She said she would call when she arrived. Our rental cars have trackers installed on all cars. John found this to be a cheaper option than paying for insurance on each vehicle. If a car was missing for a long time, we picked it up. On other occasions, we called the police to report where she was. This turned out to be much more convenient for us. I called her parents and spoke to her little sister since no one else was home. We chatted for a bit, and then I asked if our fleet hero, Matt, had anything new to say. She said that today was his last day in the service, and he was resigning. She said the naval base in Virginia was throwing a big celebration for him. She receives letters from him almost every week. Well, I found out everything I wanted and hung up, then started searching the house. I found nothing except a photo on her dresser of us on our wedding day. Behind that photo was my college graduation photo, and then 5 photos of Matt. One was from high school, and the others were from various Navy uniforms. Why the hell does she keep pictures of him? I didn't think she was texting him, but who knows? Then I looked in the closet a second time. There I found a package with a receipt from the pharmacy, dated Monday, containing a dozen condoms. There were 3 left in the package. She must have taken 9 condoms with her to have sex all weekend. I left pictures of Matt and a package of condoms on the bed so she could see them when she got home. A little after 5 o'clock, her call rang. "Hi, Shelley. How was your trip? How's the car?" "Oh, everything was great. It was so nice to drive a new car. All the girls say thank you and want to thank you in person, but I told them to stay away from you." She laughed. "Have you checked in with your friends yet? I want the hotel's phone number so I can call if something happens and leave a message." "No, we'll go eat first and then check in. If you need to find me, I have my cell phone with me, so you can always reach me. Okay, I have to go. We'll talk later." "Okay, call from your room so I can record the phone number and then the kids can talk to you. I want to know where you're staying in case something happens." "I have my mobile phone with me, dear. That's all you need to contact me. You don't need a hotel number." "That's why it's called an accident, Shelley. If something happens, I can go to the hotel to pick up your things, car keys, or anything else. So don't argue with me. Just do as I say." "Okay, see you later, honey." She hung up. I realized that I would not get the information I needed, and I hardly cared anymore. I figured she was staying with Matt, and the way I was starting to push her, she would have to come up with something to satisfy my demands. Shelley called again at 7 and spoke to the children. She gave them a phone number with a Charlotte area code, told them she was going to stay with a friend and not at a hotel because they had changed their plans. She told the kids to give the number to me. The children were talking on a portable phone, so they left the room, and when I answered the phone, they had already hung up. I called this number, but no one answered. I knew she was playing with me. If she had given me Virginia's number, she would have given herself away, so now she had to get someone from Charlotte involved. I didn't want to embarrass anyone, so I didn't call back, but I did write down the number. I didn't call back because I didn't want her to know that I suspected something. I called her parents and asked what their plans were for the weekend. They didn't have any plans, so I asked if they could babysit since I needed to go to another city to pick up the cars. They had done this in the past, so it wasn't something unusual for them. The next morning, I took the kids to their place in the minivan, then returned home and, with the help of the guys from work, moved my things into a friend's garage until I found a place to stay. These were mainly clothes, weapons, and a few tools. I left a note on her bed saying that her parents had the children and she could pick them up there. I knew she would see pictures of Matt and a package of condoms, so I let her figure out what happened. She returned late on Sunday. She had to go to work on Monday, and yet she had to drive 90 miles to pick up the children. Whether she would go on sick leave and do it the next day or go there at night, all upset, I could only guess. Around 11, the house phone rang, and I saw from the caller ID that it was her mobile. She left a message that she was busy and might not be able to call in the evening. She said she was having a great time and enjoying being with the girls. She didn't call back Saturday night, but left a message again Sunday. "Hey kids, I miss you. I'll be back late on Sunday, so go to bed and I'll see you before I go to work. I'm having such a good time. We're staying here longer and we'll be back late on Sunday. Love you, Sam. Bye, my dear. I love you, Mom." I would love to hide in the closet and watch her come home at night to see her reaction to the photos and condoms. I left her minivan on the street and took another car from work to drive until she returned mine. At work, we saw that my car was moving home, which means it was already on its way. It was 9:30. It took her almost 4 hours to get home. When I saw her coming, I turned off my cell phone and left it in the office while I headed home. At 11:30, she called home and kept saying, "Hey, where are you all? Someone picked up the phone. I'll be home in 2 hours. Someone answer." She called again 20 minutes later and said the same thing. But this time she added, "Sam, where are you? Why is your mobile phone turned off? What if I had an accident?" I parked outside in the driveway, knowing that the people living in the house were away camping, and waited to make sure she got home safely. I saw her drive into our driveway, and all the lights in the house were turned off. She took out her bags and entered the house. I saw her turn on the light, then go into the nursery and see that there were no children. Then the light in her bedroom came on, and I drove to the motel. Let that bitch wonder what happened after she sees the photos and condoms on the bed. Enjoy, honey. I played hide and seek with her all week and then started answering her calls. She scolded me desperately for moving and not telling her why. I finally agreed to come and talk after Sunday dinner. I said that I would not have dinner with her, but that I would come after the meal and asked her to tell me the time. She agreed. They had almost finished dinner when I arrived, so I poured myself some coffee and waited for the conversation to begin. The children pounced on me, happy to see me and saying that they missed me. She asked me questions, but I answered briefly and directly. When she finished washing the dishes, she sat down with the kids and asked what the hell my problem was. "How was the trip?" I asked. "Fine. I had a great time with the girls," she replied. I saw that she was going to get out with lies. "Did you find the photos I left on your bed?" "Yes, I found it, and if you had asked, I would have immediately said that I have them. Carol, come upstairs and bring me a photo of me and Dad from our wedding day, please." Carol brought the photograph and placed it on the table. Shelley opened the frame and revealed Matt's photos hidden behind ours. Shelley said, "Carol, do you know who this guy is?" "Yes, Mom, isn't that Matt Upshaw, the first guy you ever had sex with? The last time you told me about the birds and the bees, you showed a picture of him and told me what a terrible person he was, that he just wanted to have sex, and told me to beware of guys like that. You also told me to try to preserve myself until the wedding." "Thank you, Carol. If you had just asked Sam, I would have told you that I have them. Now, what other problem do you have?" "Well, you didn't bring a bag of a dozen, of which there were only 3 left that you took with you. Women buy these things all the time. We use them as jokes at nurseries and weddings and parties. I also use them to protect my fingers at work when I'm sorting through a pile of mail before sending it out." "Well, when did you buy them?" "Probably a couple of months ago. I've had them on hand for a long time, Sam. I already told you that I use them all the time. I don't remember how many times I bought them during our marriage, but it was a lot of times. Bob, go upstairs and get the piece of paper from my pillow, please." Bob went upstairs and brought the receipt from the pharmacy. I showed Shelley the receipt, which showed that she had purchased condoms last Monday. Have you used 9 condoms since Monday? I don't remember you going to any parties last week, and they're usually held on the weekend. Well, I'm not sure when I bought them, but if I haven't used them, it means they're stored at work or somewhere in the house. If you hadn't made such a drama out of it, everything would have been explained. Mom, is the word drama a bad word? Asked Bob. I walked over, took her purse from the kitchen shelf, and dumped its entire contents on the kitchen table. 1 condom was among the things out of the 9 that she took. Then I handed her her mobile phone. So that's 4 condoms. We just need to find 8 more to make a dozen. Now, while you have your phone in your hands, let's look at your list of recent calls and who's on your speed dial list. She started listing numbers, and they were all on my cell phone. But when she got to the calls last Sunday, she said there were none. I didn't believe her and asked to see the list of numbers on speed dial, but she refused. This marriage is based on trust, Sam. I have the right to privacy just like you. What kind of situation is this anyway? Are you only worried because I went away alone for the weekend to relax? I stood up and said, okay, I'll get a printout of all your calls for the last year and come back to talk to you again. Her face turned pale, and I saw tears welling up in her eyes. She got up from the table and left the room. After a few minutes, I left after talking with the children. They asked if we were getting divorced like many other families in our area, and I said that it looked like we would be. On Monday, I received a printout of the calls and brought it to work to carefully study it. It contained all the calls for the year. I saw that she talked to Matt very often throughout the year. On the way to Newport News, she spoke to him on the phone. She also called that girl in Charlotte to set up cover in case I called. She spoke to Matt again on the way back home and immediately after she arrived. She also called him an hour after she found the photos and condoms on the bed. They talked or exchanged calls 4 times a day since she started communicating with him. On Tuesday, Shelley called and asked when we could talk again. I told her that I would call on Saturday and send a package with my questions and the points that bother me that I want answers to. I said I would deliver it in a day or 2. We agreed to talk on Sunday, and she invited me to dinner. I refused, and she said I was being stubborn. With this, we ended the conversation. I sent her a list of calls from my cell phone with calls highlighted that I wanted answered. I asked Nick to carry it. I told Nick and Tony, my best guys, a little about what happened between Shelley and me. They wanted to fly to Virginia and beat Matt up to avenge me. I said that I would deal with him myself since I had my own plans. It took them less than a day to get all the information I needed about Matt. My daily routine now consisted of going to the bar near my apartment after work and playing pool. I would have a couple of drinks and dinner there and return to the apartment at 9 o'clock. I would watch some sports matches on TV, then the news at 11, and then go to bed. All this time I was thinking about what I could do to get even with Matt. The next morning when I came to work, everyone asked me if I had seen the news. They said Matt Upshaw was killed last night. It appears he was attacked or robbed and was severely beaten. When paramedics arrived, he was already dead. My God, what a shock. I had to sit down. Damn, I wish I was involved in this, but I wouldn't kill him. It was reported that this happened around 11 in the evening, while I was alone in my apartment. Shelley called in tears and asked if I killed him. I said no, but I was glad the bastard was dead. She kept insisting if I killed him, and I again said no, that I couldn't kill someone. I don't think she believed me, but I no longer cared about her opinion. Over time, details about Matt's death emerged. They said he was attacked or robbed by 2 men. I really felt sorry for him. He would have been better off if he had just taken a beating from me. I would work on his knees so he would remember me every time he took a step, but it wouldn't get any better. An eyewitness saw 2 men running away, but could not describe them other than that they were men. 3 weeks passed before the police came to me with questions. The first thing I said was, "Go talk to my lawyer. I've seen too many TV shows where they make you confess even if you're innocent." A few days later, I went and wrote a statement about where I was on the night of his murder. Of course, I was alone and no one saw me. Nick and Tony said I should have said I was with them to protect myself. A few more weeks later, I learned that not only the local police, but also naval investigators were investigating the case. I was hoping that they would find some DNA evidence at the crime scene to clear me of suspicion, but on the other hand, I didn't want the real killers to be found. Well, Christmas came, and the police came with a warrant for my arrest for the second-degree murder of Matt Upshaw. This was a blow for me. I, an innocent person, was sent to prison. My lawyer referred the case to his friend, who was an expensive and experienced criminal defense attorney. He got me released on bail of $100,000. The charge was filed with second-degree murder. Never before have I been so scared as I was after this whole situation hit me. Shelley and I were still married, but living separately. I'm sure she still thinks I killed her lover. We spent Christmas at our house opening presents, but the mood was low due to what was hanging over me. I told my son not to worry because I am not guilty, so there is nothing to worry about. 2 weeks later, I met with my lawyer, and he said that they only had circumstantial evidence against me. The only thing they had was evidence that I had said at work and at the bar that I would get even with this guy. Any normal person would say the same thing if someone cheated on his wife. They couldn't prove I was at the crime scene, but I couldn't prove I was home either. Shelley claimed she did not have sex with him, but they had numerous witnesses who believed that she had sex and that she spent 2 nights and 3 days at his house. My lawyer argues that Matt's death was due to medical failure to perform CPR, and that the broken rib that punctured his heart was the result of CPR. He invited a doctor to testify in court, which cost me a lot of money. Over the next 6 months, the prosecutor tried to make a deal with me. According to them, I could have gotten 25 years. They were ready to reduce the sentence to 7.5 to 15 years for manslaughter. Damn, this whole thing really scared me. How can an innocent person end up in such a situation where he faces a prison sentence? I couldn't make a deal, and my lawyer said that they couldn't prove my guilt because they didn't have enough evidence. We went to the trial, and the prosecutor called witnesses one after another who talked about my wife's affair. They retraced her steps using our program at work, claiming that we were following her just as they were. We called Shelley to the stand, who denied all sex allegations. We also invited our doctor, but this did not help much. The jury deliberated the case for 3 days, and on the 4th day announced that they could not reach a consensus. The court declared the case invalid. The prosecutor said that there would be a repeat trial. As it turned out, 11 jurors voted to find me guilty, and only 1 voted not guilty. The one who was on our side turned out to be a man who had not taken CPR training and seemed to want revenge. We started discussing the deal again, and we were able to reduce the sentence to 3.5 to 7 years for manslaughter. I didn't want to agree because I was innocent, but in the end I had to go for it. So I stood before the judge and told him how I committed the murder and that I was sorry. The judge gave me a sentence of 7 to 15 years, despite the fact that my lawyer claimed that there was an agreement with the prosecutor. The judge said that in his court no deals are made unless he himself is involved in them, and the sentence remains unchanged. Time in prison passed incredibly slowly. Every day was similar to the previous one. There were no weekdays or weekends. All days were the same. What saved me was that Shelley brought the children to visit me every week. Sometimes they would skip a week, and that was an awfully long time for me. My kids were off to college and were going to run a car rental company until I got out. It was hard to watch children grow up while in prison. Shelley looked better than ever. I understood that she was getting old, but without seeing other women, she seemed stunningly beautiful to me. I spent all my time in the prison library teaching other prisoners so they could get their high school diploma. I made a lot of friends by helping them. Some of the people I met couldn't even read or write. It also helped me pass the time and avoid a lot of trouble that could arise in the prison yard. We were still married because Shelley never filed for divorce. I don't know if she was dating anyone. The children told me that she was not dating, and she herself claimed this, but how could I believe her words? She hired a company to manage the car rental, and they did that. I still made good money, but it went to her, not to me, since I had nowhere to spend it. I was also sued in civil court for the wrongful death of Matt Upshaw, and of course I lost the case and had to pay his family compensation from the car rental proceeds, which made me really angry. I wanted them to deduct money from my earnings in prison. Then I guess all prisoners are always angry. Thankfully, the prisons were overcrowded. This allowed me to get out after 7.5 years. I had another 7.5 years on parole. No alcohol, no contact with ex-cons, and a whole bunch of rules and prohibitions that could get me arrested again for even the slightest infraction. My son bought me a small house in a good area, and I immediately moved there after my release. Shelley wanted me to come back to her and start over, but I couldn't do it. It was because of her that I found myself in this position. She eventually admitted to sleeping with Matt when she went to see him. She said it was just sex, that he was her first love, and she wanted to try again to see how it felt. She claimed that it wasn't that good, and that she regretted it immediately after the first time, but still spent the entire weekend with him. Shelley said they talked on the phone for about 8 months before meeting. Shelley admitted that she knew he was lying to her, but still continued to communicate with him. Her dreams of how wonderful it would be and how it would help our marriage if she had an affair turned out to be false. She said that when she saw the pictures of Matt and the condoms on the bed, she realized that I knew everything, but decided to try to lie and get out. She asked if I believed her words, and I said not for a minute. She asked if I wanted a divorce, and I said I didn't see the point in getting married again. She said that she really missed sex and that she had several affairs while I was in prison. She told me that she had sex with men she met while on vacation. I told her that she really knows how to cheer someone up. It was nice to be back at work. My son Bob decided to stay and work with me as he would eventually own the business. A year later, Nick was diagnosed with cancer and given 6 months to live. On his deathbed, he cried, confessing that he was one of those who killed Matt Upshaw. He never said who was second. I'm pretty sure it was Tony, but that's all behind us now. I forgave him then, but deep down I felt some resentment. He invited television reporters to tell them the truth, and the story was broadcast for several days before being forgotten. It sounded good on television, but it didn't help me at all, since the state would never accept his words as evidence. Over the years, I began to miss Shelley, the things we did together, all the time we spent together, our close communication at night and hugs. I took Shelley to a few family events, but there was no sex between us. We were on the brink several times, but never got there. I dated a lot of girls, but the relationships didn't last long. I was just looking for someone to have sex with. This whole situation has completely ruined my life. I would like to find a way to return to normal life. And subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think, click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next